And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Art Business Academy online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. It is good to be here with you in a critique session. Today's session is going to be a little bit different than our normal sessions. There are a couple reasons for that. You'll remember a few weeks ago, we had Mark Schmitzky in the session. I see Mark here today. Good to have you back, Mark. We were talking about titles and artwork statements and telling stories about the artwork. And some discussion ensued about how much information we want to give to our viewers, how much we want to direct their experience and talk about our inspiration. And I've long argued that it's better to give too much, that your viewer is going to take their own interpretation into it anyway. But that for a lot of viewers and potential buyers of your artwork, they want to know the story. They want to know a little bit about you. They want to feel like they've made a connection, understand that story. They're going to tell the story about the artwork. And so that spurred an invitation to you to share your artwork and stories. We're going to do some of that today. Now, I'm going to, right off the bat, tell you that this is going to be somewhat of an exercise in futility, in that I have received far more submissions than we could possibly get to today. And so I want to apologize to those of you to whom we don't get to your submission, but know that what I'm going to do in future sessions is that in the 10 or so minutes before each session, I'm just going to rotate some of your submissions into a slide deck that we can see prior to the session. And I do think that that's going to be fun to see all of our work. And I think the other thing that I hope we can take out of this, beyond just telling the stories and the background of the artwork, is just how fascinating it is to see the breadth of artwork that's out there, and inspiration, and the different vision that each of you have. Just kind of fun to see all of that work. And I am an art lover, and I love a variety of subjects and styles. And so we're going to get into all that. Now, I'll also say I'm going to pull up the images. We're going to have the image and your statement. We left out titles and sizes. Just as my team was working on putting together the deck, we realized it's just too much, and we're not going to be able to go over all of that. So we're not going to be focusing on that. Pricing, we're not going to be focusing on. If you want to kind of get into the conversation, though, I'm going to suggest that we can have a lot of conversation going in the chat today. So if you scroll over your video at the bottom, you should see an icon for chat. Go ahead and pull that up. And that'll be a good place to kind of give some feedback or reflections on what you're seeing on the artwork. We can get some conversation going there. The other thing I'll say is that if I have you in the session and I pull your artwork up and I start reading your statement, please stop me by unmuting yourself and hopping in and saying, Jason, I'm here, and I'll let you tell the story instead of me reading it to you. But with that, we're going to jump in. We're going to get to as many as we can. The last thing I'll mention is we did these randomly. As we received the images in, we talked about, okay, what order should we do them in? We thought we could do them the order they came in, but that's not fair to folks who are in other parts of the world when the invitation comes in. So we're just going to do this completely randomly. So you don't know when your image is going to show up, but feel free to jump in when they do. And our first one is coming to us from Catherine Holland. I think, Catherine, I might have seen you here in the session. Catherine's joining us from England. Let me get you up, Catherine. And if I can, if you can unmute yourself and just hop in and talk about this piece. Do I have you here?
I think so.
Yep, I've got you. Good afternoon. Talk to us a little bit about this piece, both in terms of what the inspiration was and a little bit about technique.
The inspiration, I lived in Germany for a while and in the foothills of the Alps. So the weather could be a bit extreme. And because I ride my bicycle everywhere, I experienced it quite personally, let's say. This is actually taken from a friend's window, I think, because I made friends with somebody when we lost our cat in this snow. But yeah, I cycled up there. I actually knew this road very well, and that little chapel there which is so sweet. It's on a private farm, and I wasn't sure whether you could go in them or not, so I just had a peep. And just delightful. It's a miniature chapel. It has a bike rack, and when I opened the door, it had a Christmas tree and a heater. It was delightful. But this scene is typical of the type of the weather, which becomes all-encompassing, and the snow that I'm sure you get in the States stays for months on end, which as an English person, I found very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. And I'll just say a couple of quick things that I find interesting about a scene like this. I think that you've done a beautiful job of capturing the atmosphere and the light that you see in the winter, that kind of golden sky, and you can kind of feel the chill coming through the air. Now, here's something interesting that we've noticed. We can sell summer scenes and spring scenes and autumn scenes all year round, and we do. We can sell winter scenes during the winter. And that's the only time we can sell them. For some reason, people seeing snow, they're drawn to it
at the wrong time
during the winter. But once winter leaves, that we want out of it, I guess.
Yeah,
and we have to wait until the next season comes around.
I decided to do a few of them, but after a little while, it just began to make me feel so cold.
Yeah,
I changed tack.
In Arizona during the summer, you might want to feel a little bit cooler, but nope, that just does not happen.
It's just wrong.
Thank you for sharing, Catherine.
Okay.
And now let me go to Doug Zaruba, who's in Maryland. And Doug, if you're here and want to hop in, please do. Doug says, most of my paintings in the past year were done using a very deep black paint. Doug, do I have you?
You got me.
Hey, talk to us, Doug. Talk to us about this piece.
Well, it's a winter scene.
I notice a theme emerging.
Yeah, I've been trying to paint kind of nothingness. I'm looking for tranquility. I'm looking for stillness. I'm looking for solitude. And there's really no object. I put the yellow circle in and decided I really liked it. And I did it in a way that it was deliberately sloppy because it vibrates more for me. And it's a large painting.
Yeah, what's the size of this piece?
I mean, it's not that big. It's only like 3 foot by 4 foot.
Yeah, but a significant piece. Now, isn't it interesting? And again, this was random that we end up with 2 winter scenes and 2 very unique and different approaches. And I think, again, just kind of speaks to the vision. And again, I would just point out, here we are 2 in, and if a collector walked into a gallery and encountered these 2 pieces, they could have an initial positive reaction to them, love the aesthetic of the work. But already I feel like I enjoy them more, having heard a little bit of what they are and what the inspiration is behind these pieces. And Doug, talk about, you mentioned in your statement that that this is a little different maybe in terms of your aesthetic approach to the piece.
Well, I've been painting primarily in black paint. And I got, you've heard of Vanta Black.
Yeah.
Well, I found another company.
The deepest, darkest black you can find.
Yeah, well, I found a company in the US that had made an almost identical paint that's used by NASA. And I got permission from NASA to use this paint, but it's a bitch to work with because it's carbon nanotubes and it has to be airbrushed and you got to wear a respirator and you got to have filters in your room and all that kind of stuff. So, and it works great on sculptures. They'll take a 3-dimensional sculpture and make it a 2D silhouette.
Huh.
But I also found some other paint from Stuart Semple in England. It's called 3.0 black. And that's an acrylic paint. And if I put it on with a roller, I can get a black that is so black that it sucks in everything.
Huh.
And
so this is very much kind of a departure and a reaction to that.
Because I did a series of, I think about 15 black paintings, and then I started doing this one.
Yeah.
I needed a break.
And I would have you all throw into the chat if you ever experience that where you're doing something, and you know that I'm a big advocate of consistency and creating a series and kind of thinking that way. But I often see artists then just needing a release and move in a direction. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for sharing that piece. Lori, I might have you here too if you want to hop in. And Lori is one of our artists who was featured in a past session. I think we might have even have pulled this one up. Lori, do I have you here?
Yes. Yes,
Lori,
you do.
talk about this piece and the inspiration for this one.
My cousin lives in Prescott Valley and goes out hiking
And that's
a lot.
in Arizona.
Yes, and he kindly shares photos with me when I point one out. And I loved this photo he'd taken near an abandoned mining town. And when I ran filters on it in Prisma, the colors in the car, the rust colors, became so vibrant that I got excited about working with it for my mixed media work. But to fit it on a panel that I use, I was going to have to crop it too tightly, and I didn't want to lose the sky. So I decided to make a bigger composition and added a photo of mine at the bottom, where I just reduced it all to an orangey sunset color, and then decided an old license plate would further bring out that car theme, and kind of aged the license plate in Photoshop with some filters. And then I ran the filters on the whole composition, and then proceeded with my technique of cutting those prints into 1/4-inch strips and building the scene from 3 sets of prints. And at the end, I added in some little stamps in the orange area just for another little surprise of texture. So just to the left of the license plate, you can see an area that looks a little different, and it's an orange 3-cent stamp that I've thrown into that area. So it's got probably 3 layers of paper built up, so it's got a tactile nature, as well as the jumps between the different filters that give the piece, I think, more life, and hopefully gave this old car a new life.
Yeah, so I want you all to think about kind of how you sometimes start to feel a little bit involved, maybe even a little bit obsessive about a piece. And then think just for a moment about Lori, who is cutting up these images and layering multiple layers of them. And maybe you'll feel a little less compulsive and obsessive about your own work. It's amazing, Lori, the technique that you're using. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I've got an image by Santana. And again, Santana, if you're here and want to hop in. And Santana says, this painting was inspired by one of my favorite beaches in Maui,
Hi,
Hawaii.
I am
Oh, I've got
here.
you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Santana. Talk about this piece. I think, I know for me, this piece is a huge kind of release in the sense that it's been so long since we've been able to travel. It's been years since we've been, my family and I have been to the beach. So it's just kind of nice to take a little journey with this piece. Talk about the creation and inspiration of this piece.
Well, it's one of my, I've been lucky to be able to go to the Hawaiian Islands and Maui, and this is one of my favorite beaches on Maui. And this piece borders a Hawaiian burial ground. So there's a real feeling with the volcanic rock and the ocean and the beautiful plants in Hawaii. There's a primitive feeling, and a primitive feeling that these rocks have stood there for a long time with the water washing over them. And they're living beings in the native tradition, stone persons. So I just felt they kept the wisdom. They've seen a lot of things go on in their own way. And so I call it the Wisdom Keepers. And it's 18 by 24 oil on canvas. So.
And would you have created this piece from photographic reference?
Yes. I usually photograph beautiful scenes in nature, and then work on them in my studio.
Back in the studio.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And
Thank
boy,
you.
I just do. You get pulled right in. You can hear those breakers crashing on the shore in a piece like this. Marianne, do I have you here this morning? Marianne De La Rocca. Excuse me, De La Rocca. I've got you.
Yes.
Talk about this piece. This is a little different. We've seen your work in the Art Business Academy, and this has a very different, well, not a different feel, but a different composition, certainly.
So I actually dabble in paint, and I had done a painting of a seashell on the shore. And of course it did my favorite, combination of colors. And I was playing around. I do like to manipulate a lot of my pieces with some of the photo manipulation tools like iColorama and things like that. And so I was playing with that and I really got intrigued with this. And I have a few others in the similar composition. It reminded me of maybe lava vents under the water. And it had this upward movement. I love I like my light. So I like the play of the greenish yellow, which almost feels like light coming down through the ocean, things like that. So I'm actually hoping to kind of turn this one into another series of abstracts. It's got my circles. So gotta have my circles in there. But yeah, and it's a smaller piece. It was kind of the first one in this series. I was struggling with some of my papers. They were really slick, so I wasn't being able to get enough layers. So I went down to a smaller composition. So this one's only like 8 by 10.5, and it's a different paper. So it was allowing me to get more layers on it. And actually now I'm doing a much larger piece in this similar vein.
And just to point out that this piece is done in colored pencil.
Correct. Yes, it's all colored pencil. I do I call it painting, but it's all colored pencil in gray. And then I lay my color over top of it. So it kind of gives it a little bit of I'll call it like a grainier, maybe a felted kind of feel to it when you see it. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And we'll look forward to seeing some of the larger works that come out in this series.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to them.
Awesome. Barbara Newman. And Barbara, again, if I've got you here. Now, already you can see we've looked at 5 or 6 images, and each one of them has been completely different in different directions. Barbara says, in essence, I'm a portrait painter of mostly imaginary persons. I've been working on a series of portraits of people who are placed in front of portraits of other people. This is the second, and I have 2 more in progress. I like the juxtaposition of now and then. And so this image developed, which began, as all my paintings do, from a stream of consciousness sketch in pencil in my sketchbook. We have dear friend who's a poet. I asked him to send some of his poems when I was thinking of a title. I often put titles from poetry. This title came from a stanza of one such poem. The text of the stanza is written on the letter within the painting. So very cool effect. I will tell you that we have seen, and I work with some artists who are doing work that has this sense of whimsy about it, or almost something kind of surreal. And there's definitely a clientele out there who just loves to see something that is infused with imagination and kind of wonder in the way that this one is. Linda, if I've got you here, feel free to jump in. And this one, I've got just a very brief statement, fairly standard representation of the work, and this is a finished piece. And of course, already we can tell that we're missing something here by not having the medium and being able to talk a little bit more about it. And it doesn't look like maybe I have Linda in the session. No. So here we go. I can enjoy the piece, but boy, I would sure love to hear the story and a little bit more about the technique in creating this piece. Mark, I know I've got you here. We had you in the session just a couple of weeks ago. Talk about this piece if you can. This has a little bit of personal backstory in it.
Yeah, well, I'm an amateur genealogist, and I love looking at old photographs. And I have a huge collection of antique photos that I have collected over the years from antique shops and flea markets and garage sales. This one happens to be close to home. This image was inspired by several small black and white photos of my father as a young man in Brooklyn, New York. He was an amateur photographer, but obviously In this case, he must have given the camera to my mom, and she took the photo of him. In the photograph, he's standing in a field, which I think was down near the coast, probably not far from the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which is a famous bridge connecting Brooklyn to Staten Island in New York City. But rather paint him in an open field, I chose to incorporate a variety of different objects and patterns and shapes that might remind one of the gates and the fences and the garbage cans and so forth that one would see on typical Brooklyn street back in the day. So I have him here standing. At first, I wasn't sure if I liked this painting because he's just standing there. And so I think it's not really about the figure as much as it is about the color, the juxtaposition of the colors, the patterns, the brushwork, and that's it, really.
Yeah, and so I of course would be interested to see the original photo that you're working from, and are you basically just taking that photo and trying to get the figures, kind of the gesture, how close is it in terms of what he's wearing and kind of the pattern and the silhouette of the figure, and then how much of it is just kind of taking the emotion of the scene?
Well, I took a lot of liberty. I mean, in the photograph, he's wearing a long coat, rather, I'm sorry. And he's wearing gloves, and it looks like it might be late fall, but I wasn't interested in trying to replicate that feeling or that scene, that mood. I wanted to capture him as a young man. He was very fond of playing, what's the game? He would play stickball, not stickball. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And he was he had a job as in those days, they called them soda jerks. Yeah. And he served ice cream and sodas at a place in Brooklyn. So that's why I call this a Brooklyn boy. I'm trying to really convey a sense of time, a sense of place in here. Yeah. I took a lot of liberties. There's not, he doesn't look like this. I just used him as a point of departure, as a
well, it's and again, I just echo what we've been talking about, that just having that background and hearing you talk about the piece adds so much to it. Thank you for sharing, Mark. And this piece from Deborah in Minnesota. Deborah, if we've got you here, love to have you jump in. Deborah says, this painting is from a photo taken during a visit to Sri Lanka in 2005. I'm working on a series of watercolors from photo taken after the tsunami of December 2004. The challenge of this painting was the satin fabric. I'm a beginner. The inspiration for the series is the resilience of the people following a disaster. And again, what a great opportunity it is through an artist's eyes to be able to travel around the world and see places that maybe you haven't seen or had the experience in, or to meet people that you haven't met. And what a gift it is for you to be able to share your experiences through your art. Carrie Conway, if I have you here and want to jump in. And Carrie says, this painting is made up of 3 8x8 inch wood panels After I created the design and painted the first square on the left, it felt unfinished. I then painted 2 more squares using the same shapes in different formats. At the point the painting felt complete and the triplets were born. The 3 squares are different and yet the same, working together and supporting each other. I'm always looking for a sense of balance and harmony in my work as well as in my life. Finding that feeling is the challenge I come up against with each painting. When I can feel that a sense of balance, or feel that sense of balance and harmony, I know a work is finished. What a great feeling.
I'm
Yeah,
here.
I've got you. Good, there you are.
I wanted to hear you read it. I'm
You-
here.
Yes. So, and how typical is this piece of your other work? Does your work tend to be kind of in these bold colors and strong geometric forms?
Definitely in the strong geometric forms. That's basically what I do. I love geometry. I actually do a lot of things in squares. And the technique goes back and forth between this kind of bold look and a more kind of dotted kind of application.
Yeah, and just I think really this just has so much energy. You can kind of feel it pulsing, and it's fun to move your eyes around and experience the different colors. And again, as we kind of work through the different images and we go from representational work to more abstracted work, it's just I think a great testament to how fun it is to see all of the different visions and approaches to creating artwork. I'm always a little bit mystified when I hear someone say, "Oh, I don't care for abstract art," or "I don't like representation." I don't get it. I don't see why one has to choose a particular style or genre to like, and then that excludes others. Sure, I like roast beef, but I wouldn't want to eat it every single day. And likewise, I want to experience everything that there is to experience with art. And I love seeing the different images. Thank you so much for sharing, Carrie.
Thank you.
Ellen, do I have Ellen here? Ellen Hart is actually an Arizona artist. And I think, do I have you?
Yes. Can you
There
hear
we
me?
go. Okay. It wasn't bringing you up there. Talk a little bit about this piece. And I have to say, I have a little bit of a cheat because I have seen and experienced Ellen's artwork intimately. What you don't get a sense of in this image is that it's multiple layers and dimensions, almost sculptural, and that the painting is in relief. Talk a little bit about kind of what inspired you to create artwork in this format and with this imagery.
Well, this style of painting, as far as I know, is original with me. I've never seen anybody else do anything like this. I've been painting what's going on, I think, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, not long really. And when I first started, I had multiple gallery owners tell me that I needed to have a look, and I didn't even understand what that meant in the beginning. And I have a very active imagination, and so I was thinking about what I could do that would be different than anybody else out there that I've seen. And I like three-dimensional. In fact, I probably would have started out sculpting had I been in a bigger space when I started painting, but I was in a 400 square foot RV for 10 years, and you can't really sculpt in that kind of space. So this is, I guess this is a compromise sort of for me to be able to do paintings that hang on the wall, but still have kind of a sculpting feel to it. And the process is I sometimes work with canvas, sometimes I work with gesso board. This is a canvas. And I paint the canvas, and then I build a box around it, kind of, I put sideboards on it. So it has some depth, and I do the background painting, and then I take artboard and I cut out the foreground. In this painting, the lion and the rocks he's standing on are cut out, and they're actually it's in front of the painting, and there's probably about a 3/4 inch gap between the foreground and the background. And then there's also sculpted elements on that foreground piece. I guess you call them the cheeks of the lion, where his whiskers come out. That part is sculpted. And also some of the rocks are sculpted. And you can't see it in this picture because his whiskers are white and the background mountain is white. But on the right side of his face, the whiskers actually stick out, beyond the cutout. And that was kind of a challenge.
Yeah, and so this is a conversation that Ellen and I have been having about the portfolio and images, and I think it applies to many of us here, where, capturing your artwork in even if it is a painting and technically, more on 2 dimensions. Really, I suspect many of your work is on multiple dimensions or has textures. And I think it makes a lot of sense, and especially in a case like this, in a portfolio or on a website, to have some off-axis photos that show us some of the relief and texture. And you wouldn't need to do that with all of your work, but once you can give someone a sense of the technique and the depth of the work, boy, it sure is going to add to their understanding and experience in the images. And again, hearing you talk about it also adds some dimension. And I can guarantee you, your potential collectors are going to love hearing a little bit about that technical process that's going into creating the pieces. Thank you for sharing, Ellen. Now I've got Jeff Green from Long Island. And Jeff, if you want to hop in, if you're here, talk about this piece, would love to have you join us. Jeff says, what draws me to my subject matter is light, color, and the energy I perceive in the scene. Sometimes it can be quite literal, such as the way wind rustles the leaves, as in this image. A key factor at this moment of capture was exposure time. Too long and the image becomes blurred and washed out with little definition. Too short and the image is static and literal with no sense of movement. I want to keep my images somewhat ambiguous, enough to keep you intrigued and engaged, but not too much to make them uninterpretable or too much work to decipher and enjoy. My goal is to immerse you in the energy and splendor of the scene as if you were right there next to me as I captured it. Hopefully it elicits in you, as it does in me, a sense of wonder, optimism, and joy. Love that statement. And yeah, again, this is the opportunity you have. Oh, there you go, Jeff. Gotcha.
So yeah.
Go ahead and talk to us a little bit about this specific piece and kind of maybe the forethought and time that was involved in creating a piece like this. When a lot of times we think of, image captures, oh, you just push the shutter button and you're done.
No, I was trying to convey a little of that in the description, that you've got to make some conscious choices, that it isn't necessarily accidental. And it depends on the energy you're trying to convey and therefore the kind of techniques you use. So my goal with the description was to help people kind of appreciate the work more. So,
boy, and how critical is that
in
an age when photography has become, in a lot of ways, everyone is snapping. Millions of photos are being snapped each and every day. And so, some of the wonder and awe in photography has been taken away by the everyday experience that people are having. And so, you have this thought that, oh, well, I have my iPhone, I can get a photo, but it's when you see a truly masterful image like this, where you realize, yeah, maybe I can get a photo. I could also pick up a paintbrush, but that doesn't make me an artist.
I get a lot of questions about how I do work. Some people say, don't tell anybody. Other people say, share what you want. It's fun, but it's also, yeah, you're right. There is some technique and challenge to it. And that's what I was hoping to convey with the description, that it's to give people a little bit more of an appreciation of what they're looking at and how to appreciate it more, I guess, more deeply.
Yeah, and you all know, I think from our conversations here that I come down on the side of giving more, that giving people a little bit of insight into the the technical aspect of it. It doesn't take away the magic of the artwork. In a lot of ways, it just makes me appreciate it even more and have more of a sense of awe at the time and skill that's gone into creating an image. Again, whether it's photography or sculpture, I spend a lot of time explaining the lost waxed casting method, or a painting. It just really helps add to the experience that a collector is having. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Carol Jenkins from Mount Shasta, California says, and Carol, if you're here, feel free to jump right in. This painting was the third in a series of 4 paintings I've been working on for an upcoming show. They're all abstract landscapes created with acrylic paint layered and scraped through to create exciting details in some areas and quieter expanses in other areas. This approach evokes the wild terrain I love, where one can find both the chaotic abundance of the forest floor and the serene vista seen from a mountain peak. This painting feels more exciting than the previous 2 because I experimented more with drawing into the painting. I hope I didn't overdo it and make the painting too busy. That's my challenge, how to balance complexity with simplicity. Carol, I would say you've been very successful here. I love the energy. And again, there's no right or wrong answer in a lot of cases with the work. It's about the journey and the exploration and kind of seeing the counterpoint between the artwork. And that's why in a lot of these sessions, we like to see multiple pieces so we can kind of start to get a sense of that movement. But I would say to you, congratulations on a successful piece here. And I think you've really helped capture that. And again, with abstract work, it's a question mark on how much to share, right? Because I could come and look at this and not have any idea going into it that I'm looking at a mountain peak and scene. But to me, I love to hear where that inspiration is coming from, and it adds dimension to the work. Judy, if I have you here, would love to have you jump in. Judy says, as you can imagine, this one was a highly emotional piece. I'd created the eagle sans tear last year, but wasn't sure how to finish it. On January 8th, I got up in the middle of the night, painted in the flag. I had thought of several names, but when I heard Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem, I knew I wanted to call it Unfinished. Some may think the tear trite, and I wonder if I should paint it out. Wouldn't mind hearing what others think. All right, all of you in the chat, go. Your opportunity to say there, your response to that.
I'm here, Jason.
Oh, there we go. Talk about this.
Yeah, I had painted a different background to the eagle, but it wasn't, I didn't think it was right. And then I couldn't sleep for the 2 days after January 6th. And so I finally realized I needed to finish this painting with what I felt, which is very opposite of me. I mean, I'm a really happy person, and I paint with bright colors, and I don't have sad emotions a lot. And so even talking about it now, I tend to well up because it affected me so much.
Yeah.
And so this is what came out, but I worry about the tear.
Yeah, boy. And of course, ultimately, there is only one person who can make that decision, right, Judy? And we're looking at you right now. But my experience has been that, as you think about imagery and artwork that's being created and emotions that are going to be evoked, that if it was an emotion you felt, and that resonated with you, it's going to also resonate with someone else. And I can't think of an instance where I have said to an artist, whoa, tone it down, step back a little bit, because I just find that, maybe it is strong and maybe it is overwhelming to some or a little bit much for some. But when you get that right person and it resonates, boy, it really can. And so I guess you just heard where my vote is. If you felt it, go with it, be done with it, and move on to the next piece and let the piece take on a life of its own. Guys,
Thank
we
you.
have done it. We've gone right up to our time, and I managed to get to about a quarter of the images submitted, if even that. We're going to be doing more of these sessions in the future. It's fun to see each other's artwork. And then, like I say, I'll be rotating the remainder of these slides into the 10 minutes before each of our Wednesday sessions coming up until we've worked our way through all of them. So we'll get a chance to look at them and read the statements. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to submit the imagery and for sharing the inspiration for these pieces. I want to thank you all for joining us for this session. And I hope you've enjoyed, like I have, seeing other artists' work from literally around the globe. And we will be back here next Wednesday with our normal online critique group format, looking at an artist's work. And so I hope you can all join us for that session next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.